Hey there, guys. All right, today we are back with some more geography now, and this time we are hitting up Paraguay, the country that lost 70% of its male population in a war. I'm sure they're going to cover that because that's a pretty significant event in Paraguay's history. Before I dive in, make sure you go and check out the links in the description box below. I'd love to join the Discord and follow me over at Twitch, and please do go check out the gaming channel here on YouTube. Now, with all of that out of the way, Paraguay is a small country, and yes, it's got a lot that's happened to it, and in it. 18 minutes still feels like a lengthy, chunky episode for this country. So I'm curious how well the pacing is going to feel for this one. We are officially at that point where I don't think there really is going to. I think there might be actually one more short-ish Geography Now video coming up. It's I think one of the Q countries. I'm not sure. I have to check. I got to make sure that's not an April Fool's video. Like that one time. Never forget that. I got fucking bamboozled. I knew something felt off about the country, but I trusted Barbie and I didn't pay attention to when that video had been uploaded. I didn't pay attention to the date. Anyways, Paraguay. Go ahead and dive right in.
All right, class, do we have everyone here? Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, almost missed you there, El Salvador, Cuba, Ecuador. I think that's everybody. Let's get on this field trip, eh? Ah! What? Where'd you come from?
I've been here the whole time. My name is on the list, see?
Oh, yeah. You're the one that talks weird and drinks yerba mate, huh? It's time to learn geography now!
Hey everyone, I'm your host Barbs. Paraguay is probably the weirdest, most backwards Latin American country. You can see white people speaking a native indigenous language, and at one point it was illegal for people of the same race to marry each other. The same race. And on top of that,
how? How do you enforce that?
women can balance 10 bottles on their heads. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. First, we need to go and find this place on the globe, shall we?
No.
Paraguay is sometimes called the Corazón de Sudamérica, or the heart of South America, because it's, in the middle. Interestingly enough, one of their departments is named after an American president. Anyway, Paraguay is one of the only...
It's literally just... The department is literally just President Hayes. Respect.
American president. Anyway, Paraguay is one of the only two landlocked nations in South America, bordered by Bolivia, Argentina, and Brazil, and is the only country in the Americas to have never had a coast. Bolivia once had one, and they don't like to talk about it. Paraguay is made up of 17 departments, with the capital and largest city, Nuestra Señora Santa Maria de la Asunción, or in short, Asunción. Here, of course, you can also find the busiest shipping port, the port of Villeta, along the Paraguay River, as well as the largest and busiest airport most people fly into, Silvio Pettirossi International. Whereas the second largest city, a skip further to the east, aptly named the Ciudad del Este, or East City, has the second largest and only other international airport, Guarani International. Speaking of which, see these islands in the river right here? Yeah, they used to have a huge waterfall called the Guaira Falls, or Sete Quedas. They were flooded by the reservoir created by the Itaipu Dam, the second largest dam in the world, completed in 1982, shared with Brazil. And according to most maps, it seems like this island right here is kind of split along the border with Brazil, but nobody really pays attention. Getting around in Paraguay is mostly concentrated within the areas east of the Paraguay River, which holds over 90% of the population.
Damn.
This area is called the Parañaña region. This whole area right here to the west is known as the Gran Chaco region, which also used to belong to Bolivia, but they don't like to talk about it. Anyway, it makes up about 60% of the country, yet only holds about 5% of the population, and only one main highway goes through it.
Wait a minute. Hold on. We've got a number problem here. This is 90%, and then this is only 5%. Where's the other 5% of the Paraguayan population? Do they just fly in the skies?
Main highway goes through it, the number 9 highway, which enters into Bolivia. The Alto Paraguay department in itself only has about 18,000 people, whereas just the capital city in itself has over 500,000. Fun fact, despite being landlocked, they actually have the largest navy of any landlocked country in the world, mostly patrolling the rivers. Also, another fun fact, many Paraguayans will tell you about how big the country used to be before the Triple Alliance War. Anyway, some of the top notable sites that you guys, the Paraguayan geography suggested we mention include places like the National Museum of Art in Asunción, the botanical garden and zoo,
Ooh.
the museums of ethnography
Ooh.
and natural history, Trinidad and these Jesuit missions, the streets of Aragua, the Valemi Caverns, the
No.
Heroes Pantheon,
caves.
the Palacio de los Lopez, the Independence House Museum, Asuncion Metropolitan Cathedral, Conembol Headquarters, Ferrocarril Station, and the Historic Center of Asuncion. Not to mention some pretty nice waterfalls and
Ooh.
this national park that I really can't pronounce. Ibicuí is a Guarani word, not Spanish. We'll explain culture stuff later. But in the meantime, land stuff! So as you've probably been able to gather by now, most of the fun stuff happens on the east side of Paraguay. But that doesn't mean that the west has nothing going on. For one, the country lies on a larger sub-region
map.
that extends across the southeastern
animation.
coast of South America, known as the Rio de la Plata Basin, where all the major rivers come together and empty into the Atlantic Ocean right next to Buenos Aires. This area is generally flatter with small rolling hills and no extreme elevation changes. The tallest point in the country, Cerro Pero, is only 842 meters in height. Not too far off, you can find the largest lakes, Lake Ipoa and Lake Vera, just south of the capital. The country is divided generally into 5 small ecological subregions, divided by the longest river that essentially bisects the entire country, the Paraguay River, where the country gets its name from. In the east, you have the northern uplands and the Parana Plateau, where the highest hills can be found, the Neambucu Plain, the lowest part of the country, and to the west, you have the Gran Chaco, the relatively flat, drier, incredibly boring part of the country made up mostly of farms and cattle ranches. Interestingly enough, though, if you go up in the Chaco, you can come across the Defensores del Chaco National Park, which has this 40-kilometer wide thing called the Cerro León, a strange
40-kilometer wide thing. I just love that. I just love thing being used as just a word for like stuff that totally has a name, but you just don't want to bother with it.
brain-shaped geological structure that pops out of nowhere, and nobody really quite knows how it was formed. Much of the boundaries of Paraguay are made up of rivers, like the Picomayo, Apa, Estrella, and the 2 main ones, the Parana in the east and the Paraguay in the middle. Because there are no mountain ranges, much of Paraguay's climate only comes in 2 seasons. The warm winds from the Amazon up north bring the wet season, around October to March, and the cold winds from the Andes bring in the dry season from May to August. And because the land is so flat in much of the areas, the winds can pick up speeds pretty fast, up to 160 kilometers per hour. On rare occasions, they may even develop into small tornadoes. However, most tornadoes hit the Pampas regions of Brazil and Argentina instead. Whew, yeah, that brain-shaped hill thing looks pretty cool. Put it on your bucket list. Anyway, it's time for my triple shot of espresso break, which means Noah comes in and finishes off this segment. What the?
Yeah, Noah's still on vacation.
Okay, Caleb then.
Now, although much of the land lies below 300 meters, it isn't all flat. The abundance of waterways and rolling hills creates a somewhat mildly congenial scenery with pleasant waterfalls and national parks, where you can find the national animals, the pampas fox and bare-throated bellbird. Classified as a middle-income country, Paraguay's fiscal growth has seen a comfortable incline since the 80s due to the abundant hydroelectric resources they have for export. And 100% of their electricity is produced through hydropower, making them one of the cleanest energy-efficient countries. Nonetheless, out of all the landowners of Paraguay, only about 1% own 70% of the land, most of which used for
That's not good.
agriculture and forestry, which makes up about 30% of the GDP. If you look at Paraguay from space, you'll see all these rectangular plots of the West. Those aren't farms, those are mostly sectioned off holdings for lumber. Yeah, it's kind of a lot. And what do they produce? Let's just say they are the 6th largest exporter of soy in the world.
Woohoo!
And 8th for beef.
Woohoo!
They are also the 2nd largest producer of stevia.
Woohoo!
Which brings us to food. Now, as a cattle raising country, no shocker, Paraguayans love their beef. They even once held the world record for the largest barbecue in the world with over 30,000 attendees in 2008.
Woohoo!
Otherwise, some top notable dishes you guys, the Paraguayan geography
Oh shit, dude, that looks good.
keeps suggested we mention include things like the national dish sopa
Oh, that look good.
Paraguaya, mbeyu, milanesa cutlets, soyo soup, vori, pira caldo, corn pudding with meat, and everywhere you can find 2 things: chipa, which are cheese bread rolls, and
Cheese bread. Cheese bread. You know, there is one thing in this world that surpasses all others. There is the most goated combination in all of recorded history, and that is cheese and bread. Literally perfection. Now, of course, You want to get a little crazy here, right? You do the trio: cheese, bread, and soup. Oh, it's literally the best combo, man. Oh man.
Terere, which is basically yerba mate, but prepared with cold water and ice rather than hot water. And it originated here in Paraguay from the Guarani people. There is almost nothing more Paraguayan than drinking terere in a guampa through a bombilla. Well, I guess the only thing more Paraguayan would be the Paraguayan people. Which brings us to...
Thank you, Caleb.
I guess you could say that it's time for me to go away.
Caleb! Now, as we mentioned, the people of Paraguay are probably the strangest in pretty much the entire Latin world. For one, they have a really weird
glad I
history
don't
and a
have an eye
really
tracker.
weird way of communicating.
Well, that's a bold claim. You sure you want to go there?
Yes. But first, the pie chart. Paraguay has around 7 million people and is the most ethnically homogenous country in Latin America. Kind of. Somewhere around 95% of the country identifies as mestizo to some degree, mestizo being the mix between European, mostly Spanish, and native Amerindian. This number, however, may be a little skewed as some reports say mestizo white, whatever that may indicate. But either way, the vast majority are mestizo. Interestingly enough, though, genealogists estimate that somewhere around 40% of the total population has some kind of Italian ancestry, as many Italian immigrants came in after independence years, much like Argentina. Otherwise, about 1% of the population is made up of Afro-Paraguayans, and the rest are made up of other groups, mostly Europeans like Germans, Russians, and Poles, as well as East Asians like Koreans, Japanese, and Chinese, with a small Amerindian minority, mostly Guarani. They use the Guarani as their currency, they use the Type C plug outlet, and they drive on the right side.
Damn right they do. Correct side of the road, motherfuckers. Fuck you, Britain.
Of the road. It's interesting, you don't really see too many Paraguayans outside of Paraguay, and when two Paraguayans meet each other outside of Paraguay, it's like,
oh, what a lovely day it is here in, well, let's say Tokyo.
Oh, hello there, senor. Where are you from?
Why, hello, curiously approachable stranger. I'm from Paraguay. You?
I am from Paraguay.
yeah, Paraguayans have a close kinship. Like, literally. At one point, the government even tried to racially homogenize the populace by becoming the only country in the world to make same-race marriages illegal for white people. Same race. Yeah, this dude was a pretty intense dictator. And that's not even a subjective description. His official title literally was Supreme and Perpetual Dictator of Paraguay. Anyway, what makes a Paraguayan a Paraguayan? Well, most Paraguayans will probably tell you that the number one thing would be the Guarani language. Paraguay is officially a bilingual country with Spanish and Guarani, an indigenous native language, sharing equal status, although more people are actually fluent in Guarani. It's like a backwards New Zealand. Imagine if the majority of people who weren't Maori were fluent in Maori and English was their second language. That's basically Paraguay. But how did it become this way? Well, long story incredibly short, Jesuit missionaries learned to share their religion and Spanish conquerors learned the language so that they could ally with the Guarani to fight against the Incans. Over time, children were born mestizo, but those Guarani mamas were really keen on teaching their kids their language. Plus, it was an acceptable language respected by the Spanish colonizers since it was used to help fight the enemy, and hence it was never really repressed. Today, most people are
That is a relationship between colonizer and colonized that you don't really see. Like, at all. Like, 99% of the time.
Either bilingual or speak Yopara, which is like a mix between Guarani and Spanish. And who better to explain than an actual Paraguayan? So Paraguayan geography Marianne contacted us. Not only did she help me with this episode, but she was literally randomly visiting LA with her family on vacation while we were filming the Paraguay episode. So I said, do you speak Guarani? She said, my mom speaks better. So I was like, great, you both are gonna be in the episode.
Mariam, lo único haetan debe, en wahe oga pejaron huepotita.
I'm sorry. Okay, so you know someone's Paraguayan when they say a few different phrases. In regular Spanish, mira esto. But a Paraguayan would say, mira un poco. And in Guarani, they would say,
Ema emina kowae.
so most Latin American countries, they have like a word that kind of means anything like vaina. Or like, oh, mira esta vaina. But in Paraguay, we have like the Guarani word for it, which is maena.
Ema emina kowae.
And as usual, Hannah usually takes over the culture stuff, but she's got a little acting gig going on, so she's not here. But that's okay, because we can always have Marianne. Again, you do this is your country, you should do this, okay? We don't need Hannah for this.
As mentioned, the Guarani language is spoken natively by about 7 million people across Bolivia, Brazil, and Paraguay. In actuality, though, the indigenous Guarani people in themselves only number at about 300,000. Catholicism is the dominant religion of about 89% of the country adhering it to some degree. Of course, it played a key role in shaping much of the country throughout centuries. Cathedrals and old Jesuit missions speckle the land all over, even in sparsely populated areas. Religious festivals are well attended, like the Festival of San Juan on June 24th, where people play traditional games and walk on coals, and La Festival de la Virgen de Cacupe on December 8th,
Walk
with a
on
huge
fire? No, thank
pilgrimage
you.
to the holy shrine in the town. And according to Paraguayan tradition, August is considered the bad luck month, and on August 1st, many people drink carulim, a traditional Guarani drink made of the distilled sugarcane juice, the ruda plant, and lemon to ward off illness and bad luck. Every year, the Trans Chaco Rally is held in September, a 3-day motor rally, thousands of miles of dirt pass on the vast, empty western region of the country. Traditional Paraguayan lace making is called ñatudi, which Nyanduti. You see, she does this in real life. Nyanduti, which means spider web, and there's even a Nyanduti festival in July. And finally, technically, it is still legal to have gun duels to settle disputes as long as both parties are blood donors. Yeah, gun duels. And finally,
I know where I'm moving, baby. I'll donate my blood, sure. For blood, so I can partake in a blood in a gun duel. Yo.
let's let Keith finish off with the music section.
In Paraguay, music has always been kind of an escape from the pressures of life, whether it be a dictatorship or having something over half your population killed off or something like that. So they have 3 main traditional styles of music. The lively galopa and this thing I can't pronounce. Paraguayan polka was actually influenced from the Czech immigrants and evolved into the Guarania, created by this dude in 1925. Traditional instruments fuse both native and Spanish elements. You might see things like sugarcane flutes and gourd rattles. Whereas the Spanish introduced the Spanish guitar and Spanish harp, which turned into the famous Paraguayan harp. Paraguayans are world-renowned for being top harp players. Finally, the one thing you cannot miss if you come to Paraguay is the bottle dance, or the danza de la botella. Women dance with bottles or jars stacked up on their heads, sometimes balance over 10 at a time. It is truly a
Ow.
spectacle to see, kind of like this. So yeah, if you're gonna take anything away from Paraguay, it's polka, harps, and bottles. And that's pretty much all I got.
Ow.
Oh, and hey, we are launching Keith t-shirts. God, we're launching Keith shirts, and it's gonna be awesome.
That's right. Thank you, Keith. Order his shirt on geographynow.com. Yeah, to elaborate on what Keith said, during the Paraguayan War, or the War of the Triple Alliance, Paraguay pretty much had 3 countries gang up on them and
War of the Triple Alliance is a name that just goes so fucking hard. Like, that's a dope name for a war, dude. Like, war sucks. Duh. But, like, you're gonna have a war, at least give it a fucking cool-ass name. War of the Triple Alliance? That's a sick-ass name.
lost somewhere around 70% of their entire male population through war. Historians claim that this was probably one of, if not the most destructive war on the populace in modern times. Yeah, it's a crazy part of their history. And speaking of history,
Just
here's
moving
the
on from
extremely quick condensed history of Paraguay. Guarani natives, Viceroy of Rio de la Plata, independence
Oh, wow,
from
big
Spain,
jump.
Francia dictatorship, Carlos Antonio Lopez becomes the first president, the Triple Alliance War, territory lost, 1904 revolution, the Chaco War, El Stronato, the 1992 Constitution, the 2012 coup d'etat. And that brings us to the next segment, the extremely condensed list of notable people. Some of the people you guys, the Paraguayan geography peeps.
All right, that was a pretty weak history segment. I feel like weaker than even the weak ones I've said in the last few videos. I've said we're weak in the last few videos. This one was the weakest so far in the recent Geography Now videos that we've watched.
Suggested we mention include people like Silvio Petirosi, Jose Felix Estigarabia, Luis Alberto de Parana, Josefina Pia, Agustin Pio Barrios, Berta Rojas, Robin Wood, Larissa Riquelme, Augusto Roa Bastos. So many soccer/football players like these people. So there you go, Latinos that also speak a native indigenous language and put bottles on their heads while dancing and playing to the harp. Yeah, they must be the life of the party. And speaking of parties, let's see whom Paraguay hangs out with, shall we? So in their early history, Paraguay kind of deliberately isolated themselves, which is why they retain such a high level of uniqueness. Nonetheless, they've moved on and now party with pretty much anyone. Over time, they've opened up and are now part of numerous bilateral organizations, such as the Latin American Integration Association, the Rio Group, the Mercosur, and UNASUR. Obviously, that means they pretty much get along with most other South American countries. Even Bolivia settled an agreement that ended the border dispute left over from the Chaco War in the 1930s. Paraguay is currently the largest nation in the world to officially recognize the Republic of China, or Taiwan, rather than the People's Republic of China. The relationship goes all the way back to 1957. The heads of state and high-ranking government officials constantly visit and have signed numerous trade and development deals. Oddly enough, the two states are also antipodes of each other. That is, they are literally on the complete opposite sides of the globe from one another. Interestingly enough, also, Pakistan has also strengthened relations with Paraguay recently in sharing their expertise in resource development. Products like oil seeds, wheat, and cotton are heavily produced in Pakistan, and they hope to invest in Paraguay's agriculture sector in growing such crops to cultivate a mutual trade relationship. Because of its sizable migrant community that moved during the early 20th century, Paraguay has had relatively close relations with Eastern and Central European nations like Poland, Germany, Russia, and Ukraine. Each have a representative embassy. Many of these communities still speak their mother language and have relatives in their respective European homelands. Fun side note, Paraguay also has about 40,000 German and Russian Mennonites that came in during the 1920s and are heavy contributors to Paraguay's dairy industry. When it comes to their best friends, however, most Paraguayans I have talked to have said it would probably be Argentina and Brazil. Although historically these two, plus Uruguay, kind of ganged up and fought relentlessly against them, they've moved on and are now closer than ever, never fighting another war since then. These two are not only their biggest trading and business partners, but socially they get along as people pretty well too. They share a lot culturally. Like Argentina, many Paraguayans have Italian ancestry, and they have a huge love of barbecue and gaucho culture with horseback riding and music like cumbia. Many Paraguayans also moved to Argentina for better opportunities. Brazil is not only their largest export partner, and not only do many people in the eastern border of Paraguay speak Portuguese, but Brazil also has been a very important friend in the development and investment sector for Paraguay. The Itaipu Dam was a huge deal, and it is probably the biggest link that joins the two nations. Although it has come with its controversies, overall, Paraguay and Brazil are always going to be buddies at the end of the day. In conclusion, if you want to see a backwards place where the indigenous language dominated the colonized one, with people that dance with bottles on their heads while sipping cold tea from a bullhorn, come to Paraguay. And before we go, Vinny Pue, come on in, Mariana and Sarah. Thank you so much for being in this episode. Before you go, anything you want to say to Paraguay?
Well, thank you for inviting me on your show.
No haiku, Paraguay.
And there we go.
Stay tuned. Peru is coming up next.
And that was Geography Now, Paraguay. Got nothing to add here? Yeah, this was, I wouldn't say any, I think this is roughly the pacing that you want for this. This is the kind of pacing that I think should have been here from the beginning. Had, if Barbie had the resources and the time to make the videos this long from the beginning, this is, I think, the ideal length for Geography Now. For probably most of the countries. We'll see how the even longer videos that are, that come up not too far down the line where they start averaging closer to around 30 minutes. We'll see how the pacing is there. I've yet to watch any of those videos. Remember, originally we started this series out kind of out of order. I think I first watched the Germany video because it was like their most popular video at the time or something like that. So we'll see. I think it starts maybe around the S's, or maybe it does start around the P's when we start getting to the 30-minute average. I'm not sure. Can't remember. I looked before recording today, but yeah. This was Geography Now Paraguay. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.